Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for this build, we're going to be concentrating solely on the Godslayer's Greatsword, one of my favorite weapons in the game. It's a ton of fun to use, and its Ash of War Queen's Blackflame is excellent. It does percentage damage, fire, and physical damage, which combines for a lot of damage in general. This is a very, very good Ash of War. It has extremely good hyper armor. We're going to talk about that as well. We came up with a really good build just for the Godslayer's Greatsword itself. I know the last Blackflame one I did was a combination build. By the way, we're going into Journey 9 here. I just wanted to show it on screen. Some people are curious. So we are at max scaling. We are going to take on some early game bosses in this video. Well, first things first, where do you get the Godslayer's Greatsword? You get the Godslayer's Greatsword at the Divine Tower of Caelid. It's at the basement. You do have to do some platforming and work your way down. I'm going to show it on the map at the end here. And then it's in the chest here after the boss, which is the Godskin Apostle. Can be tough to fight at lower levels. However, he is susceptible to sleeping pots. One thing that you're going to see in this video that you're going to recognize with the Godslayer's Greatsword if you hadn't used it yet, it has really good hyper armor. I said I would talk about that. There's a lot to talk about there. The hyper armor is excellent. Typically speaking, I would recommend armor that would give you at least 55 poise because hyper armor is a multiplier of that. In this case, since it has really good hyper armor, if you have good posture, good poise, it's very hard to get knocked out of this Ash of War. It's a really good one for hyper armor. Now, what about scaling? Well, this is actually a dex weapon. It does have a little bit of hefty strength requirements to start, given the fact that if you want to single-hand it, you're going to need, I think, at least 20 strength. After that, though, it scales with dex, which you need 22 dexterity, and then you need 20-something faith as well, because it's also going to scale with faith. How does the Ash of War scale? The Ash of War scales a mix between dexterity and faith. It's a combination of both. Fire part comes from the faith, physical part comes from the dexterity. So this is very much not really a quality weapon exactly, but in the sense of quality it is, because you're going to be splitting your stats between dexterity and faith if you want to make the best out of its Ash of War. So for the Ash of War, there is something to mention really quick. After that initial pullback, which you can actually make contact and hit with, then you get 2 of the fire hits, which have very, very good hyper armor, as I mentioned. There is one thing to mention as far as that goes. You only get 1 percentage damage throughout the entire Ash of War, but it can take off a lot, and the fire and physical damage, all 3 hits, if you make contact with all 3, can do massive damage to the majority of bosses in the game. As far as mobs go, this is actually excellent against mobs. It really works quite well against them, simply for the fact that you're never going to get knocked out of this Ash of War for the most part against normal mobs, and then you're going to be able to absolutely smack them with it. Even if you just want to use the regular sword hits, they're good too. As long as you have enough into dexterity, it's going to do a lot of damage. This is a really fantastic sword for pretty much all the mobs in the game. Real quick, by the way, there's a Discord in the description, and there's a ton of people that have been joining lately. It had a lot of people that joined over the weekend. It's been really cool. We have a great group in there, so be sure to join that Discord. And if you're not subbed, definitely be sure to sub if you want to join an awesome Elden Ring community. It's been a ton of fun so far. That is just something I forget to mention like all the time in my videos, and lately over the weekend I mentioned it a lot, and then I had a lot of other people join. It's just been a ton of fun being able to help each other out, being able to trade, all that kinds of stuff. It's just a lot of fun. It's a really good group. It's pretty awesome. All right, let's get back to the sword. So this sword, by the way, is going to be on my next list that I'm going to do. I'm going to do like 10 different weapons that I'm recommending to try out if you haven't tried them out as we wait for DLC. This is going to be one of them, because it's really fun to use. This is a really fun weapon to use. It's a really fun weapon to learn, and it's really powerful too against the majority of bosses in the game. The Ash of War can be a blast when you pull it off, and it really does feel good too when you're able to pull off all of it for massive damage. This weapon almost in a sense does feel legendary, and I feel like some of the list of the legendary weapons or the special weapons in the game, I think there's like 10 of them or whatnot that you have to get the achievements for. Some of them obviously are a little bit of a letdown. Godslayer's Greatsword, if it was in that category, would not be a letdown, simply for the fact that you get the percentage damage, the fire damage. It is a dex weapon that looks like a strength weapon, but at the same time, once you invest in those 2 stats, you're going to get a lot out of this. This is something that's really reliable against pretty much all the bosses in the game. Speaking of which, we get to beat up Godric. I know it's on max scaling and this is early game stuff, but I was at the end of the game starting a new game, and as you guys know, I'm on console. I'm actually on Series X now. It's just one of those things where I have to take on what bosses I can take on for each individual video, and then kind of move on to the next set of bosses for the next build that I'm making. And by the way, the next one I think I'm going to be doing is Bloodhound's Fang. I know a lot of people have been asking about that one. It's a quality weapon, so it could be a little bit of a challenge. Looking forward to that. That's going to be this week too, for sure. Yeah, I think for that one, maybe we'll take on Radon and the Draconic Tree Sentinel and a couple others. Some of those bosses, like the mid-game bosses with that build, so we'll check that out too. I know the Godslayer's Greatsword here was a lot of early game stuff. Still an awesome weapon, though. I've used it in the late game. It's fantastic. Let's get into equipment. For equipment, we have the Godslayer's Greatsword plus 10. We have the Godslayer's Seal plus 25. We have the Blackflame Monk set on. We have the Dragoncrest Great Shield Talisman, Fire Scorpion Charm, Ritual Swords Talisman, Shard of Alexander, and of course the fire tier as well. Then we have Radon's, I think Greaves or Pants on or whatever, so we can hit that 55 posture that we can get the bonus for the hyper armor. For stats, this is a really split build. As I mentioned, it is a little bit annoying to have to split stats at around 150, but I went for 40 dexterity and then 40 faith because we have to have 20 strength as well, simply for the fact that if you want to one-hand it at all, you're going to need that 20 strength. If you're just two-handing it though, of course, you can go for less strength. With this though, I felt like I was doing really good damage. We were able to get a lot out of it with the 40 dexterity and the 40 faith, splitting the stats between the two, just like the Ash of War splits the stats when you use it. So for buffs, we're drinking our tier, which obviously has the fire tier in it. Then we're using Golden Vow. Then you can use Blessing's Boon if you want for some extra HP. Then we have Flame Grant Me Strength, and we're going to take on the NPC Invader here as well after we fill up our FP. This is something, by the way, that also works great on NPC invaders. You're able to knock them back with the first hit if you can land it, and then the follow-up 2 hits will finish off almost any NPC invader in the game. He had a little bit of HP left, but I actually forgot I unequipped the Ritual Swords Talisman. If I had it equipped, he would have been hit and killed by the entire Ash of War. Now, on to mobs again. I want to talk about some stuff and show how ridiculous it is against a group of mobs. So as we pull everybody together here so we can show off the Ash of War on mobs, I just want to state that real quick, as far as this sword goes, you're going to love it if you haven't tried this. This is really one of the fantastic ones in the game. It's a really fantastic sword to use with an awesome weapon art, so definitely be sure to check this one out. This is something that you're going to want to pick up, try on the majority of bosses in the game. You're going to have good success with it too. And you're going to see some of the hyper armor here. You can get knocked out of it by certain enemies, like obviously we have the tougher knight here, but in the end it's not going to matter because we're still going to be able to pull this Ash of War off. And again, if this is something that you haven't used before, definitely be sure to check it out. I mean, just look at the damage here and the wide sweep that it has to take on any mob in the game, the majority of bosses with ease as well too. Also, if you're going to move around talismans at all, I usually don't say this, but make sure that you have the Shard of Alexander for this one. That's something that you're really going to want. The Fire Scorpion Charm is really good too, and the Ritual Sword Talisman. I really like the setup that I have. The Shard of Alexander is really the one that makes this absolutely smack. And again, that hyper armor, that damage, percentage damage, fire damage, physical damage, it's all there. Great Ash of War. And you can throw Black Flame Balls too, which obviously is a good mix if you're using a Godslayer seal as well. And be sure to check out the Discord, as I mentioned. I started a Patreon as well if you want to check that out too. I'm going to be uploading some stuff for that. It's relatively new if you want to support the channel even further. If you're not subbed and you love overpowered PvE builds, be sure to check out all the awesome builds that are on my channel. Thanks for watching, and as always, I will catch you guys there.